A fifth year, no more. Kyle McCord is going to the NFL.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, we got our answer. Kyle McCord is going to the NFL. Hello, everyone. I'm Jackson Holzer, and this is Locked On Syracuse. And thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And folks, it's a full podcast here on this Friday, and stay tuned for a later announcement about Pull Friday later on this evening. We got some breaking news, and we finally got our conclusion about Kyle McCord and the fifth year of eligibility. He said, you know what? I'm going to go to the 2025 NFL draft. So that's what we're going to talk about here on this edition of Locked On Syracuse. We're also going to discuss the effect on the current quarterbacks on the roster. Is Rickie Collins, Syracuse football's 2025 opening day starter? Well, be sure to stick around and hear my thoughts on that. Plus, there should be no regrets. I think Syracuse football, yes, hindsight is ultimately 2020, but at this very moment, I think they made the right decision with what they did in the portal at quarterback and trying to get Kyle McCord back. So plenty to discuss here on this edition of Locked On Syracuse. Before we get to everything, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed, win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Syracuse quarterback Kyle McCord has officially declared for the 2025 NFL Draft. Per ESPN's Pete Thamel, as many of you guys are well aware of, McCord had been pursuing a potential fifth year of college eligibility and was in the midst of an appeal process from the NCAA. And Fran Brown said earlier this week that he expects a decision one way or another by the end of the week. And now we have our answer. However, it should be noted that Kyle McCord told ESPN this, quote, "With the way everything played itself out and what I'm hearing in terms of feedback at the draft, it just makes sense to go after weighing all the options out." So from that statement, and it's sourced, it's confirmed from News Channel 9 host and Q Sports Talk host Stephen Fonte, that this decision was independent of what the NCAA was going to say regarding a fifth year of eligibility. Kyle McCord essentially got the feedback where it makes more sense to go to the NFL and try his luck with the draft than it does to come back to college, and more specifically Syracuse, because I don't think he was ever going to enter the portal. I think it was Syracuse if he gets the fifth year, or go to the NFL. He decides to go to the NFL. In fact, the NCAA still hasn't made a ruling on Kyle McCord's fifth year. But because McCord is making a preemptive strike of saying, you know what, I'm just going to go to the NFL, this essentially kills the dream that Kyle McCord will not be back with Syracuse in 2025 because he got the feedback from the NFL that wherever he ends up in the NFL draft, it's going to be more worth it than coming back to Syracuse. I'm very happy for Kyle McCord. I truly am. Am I bummed as a Syracuse fan and as an alum that he's not coming back for 2025? Of course, selfishly. And it's okay, you, the listener, or you, the viewer, to feel that way because we want to see this team win games, right? Or at least I do. I want to see this team win, and I think Kyle McCord gives the team the best chance to win. But I'm very happy for Kyle McCord, and he's making a decision that is best for himself. And he really, in my opinion, and I'm curious to hear if you guys agree or disagree with me on this, so feel free to comment in the comment section below. I'll try to respond to some of you guys. That if Syracuse can build a sustained winning program under Fran Brown, and that's to be determined, it was a great first season, but who knows what 2025, 2026, etc. are going to bring. But if they can build that sustained winner, a sustained solid to, dare I say, a really, really good program, right? I think Kyle McCord we're going to look back on this season from 2024 that he was the main player that turned the whole ship around. He was a culture-changing type of player. Because with every great coach, it doesn't matter how great of a coach you are. You need the players, ultimately. And Kyle McCord, in my opinion, if Syracuse going forward builds a big-time program, he's a large part in reason why. He came from Ohio State. And he was very good at Ohio State, in my opinion. Maybe you feel differently about that. But he had a solid year. But it wasn't good enough for their standard. And so they essentially they let him walk out the door. They brought in Will Howard, and more power to Ohio State because, well, they're in the college football semifinal, and I think they're the Vegas favorite to win the whole thing. So it's not like they made the wrong decision, but they let him walk out the door, and he goes to Syracuse, okay? And he ends up proving a lot of people wrong. He wasn't mediocre. He wasn't just average. He was really, really good the entire time. McCord finished the year with over 4,700 passing yards, which, by the way, it still leads the country. And when the entire college football playoff is over, Kyle McCord will still be the leader despite only playing 13 games. There will be some quarterbacks who play 15. But Kyle McCord's still going to edge them out in passing when all is said and done. He threw for 34 touchdowns to just 12 interceptions. That is a near 3-to-1 ratio. That is elite. And in 13 games, and I almost find this as impressive as any of the other numbers would indicate, in 13 games, Kyle McCord only had one stinker. One. He had one bad game. That was it. And we know this, right? It was the Pitt game. He throws for 5 interceptions. I don't want to talk too much about it, but that was his only bad game. And I find that to be really impressive. He was rock solid throughout the entire year. Very steady, second team All ACC. Kyle McCord, he set the Syracuse passing records in a single season for yards, touchdowns, and completions. He finished top 10 overall in Heisman voting. And overall, I wish Kyle McCord nothing but the best in his NFL career. And I'm glad that he got the feedback that he was looking for. I'm genuinely happy about this. I think it's awesome for him that he got the feedback, and I hope that he goes as high as possible in the NFL draft come, I think it's in April, late April. I hope he goes as high as possible. I'm a New York Jets fan. Maybe he goes to the New York Jets, although I got to be honest, I don't know if I wish that upon him to go to the New York Jets because, I mean, they kind of kill quarterbacks. So maybe go to any of the other franchises, maybe not Cleveland either. There are some organizations I would prefer he avoid, but that's not going to be his call ultimately. I just hope that he goes as high as possible. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments section below on Kyle McCord entering the 2025 NFL Draft. I think he was a culture-changing type of player, especially if the Orange can build a sustained winning program under Fran Brown in the future season. So best of luck to Kyle McCord. He had a terrific year with Syracuse. It was probably about as good as what we could have hoped for, honestly, from him, setting all those records, leading the nation in passing. It was certainly a fun year to watch on offense for Syracuse. But we got to move on. Now it's time to move forward, ladies and gentlemen, okay? Because Kyle McCord's not coming back. The dream is over. So coming up, we're going to talk about how Kyle McCord's decision affects the other quarterbacks on the roster. So stick around here on Locked On Syracuse. This is a message from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Are you tired of the endless waiting, wondering, and worrying about your taxes? Well, now that's a thing of the past. You see, taxes don't need to be complicated or stressful. TurboTax is here to change the game by matching you with a TurboTax expert who can get to work on your return right away. No more waiting for answers. No more wondering if you're missing out on deductions. Whether you've got one form or 20, TurboTax experts give your taxes their undivided attention while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on what really matters. You won't have to lift a finger, but you'll get the peace of mind knowing that your taxes are being handled by the pros. Ready for stress-free taxes and the most money back guaranteed? Head over to turbotax.com today and get matched with your expert who's ready to take your taxes off your plate so you can focus on your day. Only available with TurboTax Live full service, real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details out at turbotax.com/guarantees. I'm Jackson Holzer, and this is Locked On Syracuse. And folks, this is a special Friday full podcast because Kyle McCord decides to enter the 2025 NFL Draft, independent of any ruling from the NCAA, per ESPN's Pete Thamel and News Channel 9's Steve Infante. Okay, so we talked about some of Kyle McCord's accomplishments with Syracuse and how he could be a culture-changing type of player for the Orange. We'll always remember the 2024 season with Kyle McCord. But now it's time to move on, ladies and gentlemen. Let's do it together, all right? How does this decision affect the current quarterbacks on the roster? And I would love to hear from you what you think. Who should be the starting quarterback in 2025? Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. To me, I think we're back to where we were when Syracuse originally signed Rickie Collins from LSU out of the transfer portal. It's going to be a competition to see who the starter is. We do not have a current quarterback one, in my opinion, on the roster. It will be a competition, unlike last season when everyone knew, right, that Kyle McCord was going to be the starter. It's going to be a competition this time around. And I also want to get this out of the way, all right? We had on 24/7 Sports' Mike McAllister yesterday. This was right before, evidently, that Kyle McCord was going to make his decision. And he said on there that he doesn't think that Syracuse is going to add another quarterback in the transfer portal, and neither do I. I think that the starting quarterback is currently on the roster right now. I do not think they are going to pursue another quarterback in the portal, and we'll get to it later on whether or not Syracuse should have any regrets. And in my opinion, they should not with the Kyle McCord situation. There are 4 quarterbacks who have the chance to start for Syracuse in 2025. I think the leader has got to be Rickie Collins, the LSU transfer. He signed with Syracuse back in December, and he's got 3 years of college eligibility remaining. So that's certainly intriguing, especially if he has a big-time year. Maybe he decides to stick around with Syracuse for the full 3 seasons, or at very least, he sticks around for 2 seasons. That would be very, very nice. To me, he is boom or bust. All right, Rickie Collins has only thrown 7 passes at the collegiate level, just 7 of them. And he was a 4-star recruit in 2023, and scouting reports from high school suggest that he could be a really good player. He's got good athleticism, above average mobility. He's got good arm strength, but he certainly needs to work on his footwork per his 24/7 Sports scouting report. And Collins, I'll admit to you all, you can check the archives of this podcast. He wasn't someone that I was really high on. And the reason why I wasn't really high on him was because he's a question mark. Like it or not, that's what he is, in my opinion. You could believe that he is really good, and maybe he will be. But he could also not be very good. We don't know. He's thrown 7 career college passes. Ironically, he's 7 for 7. He has never thrown an incompletion. But we're not sure about Rickie Collins. I think he enters the spring and fall camp as the favorite to start. I think he's going to be the favorite. But that doesn't mean he's guaranteed to be the opening day starter come the end of August when the season kicks off in Atlanta against Tennessee. Oh, that's going to be a fun one. Would have been more fun probably with Kyle McCord, in my opinion. Then you got, just talked about Rickie Collins. Then you got Jakhari Williams. Jakhari Williams was a 2024 3-star quarterback, and he redshirted this past season. He's 6'2", 200 pounds, and a dual-threat quarterback. I think Williams will enter the spring and fall camp as the number 2 quarterback, but he will certainly have the chance to be the starter come opening day. But I do believe that Collins has the upper hand, and I'm going to tell you why. It's not just the fact that Collins was someone who the staff brought in the transfer portal. It's that I think if Syracuse truly believed in Jakhari Williams, I don't believe they would have pursued a guy like Rickie Collins. There wouldn't really be a need to add on another quarterback. And by the way, this is separate of Kyle McCord, because I think no matter what, Kyle McCord was always going to be their plan A. I don't care how much you believe in Jakhari Williams. If Kyle McCord could come back, you would take him back in a heartbeat. Let me know in the comments section below. So it does nothing really to do with Kyle McCord. It has everything to do with the fact that this staff, they got Jakhari Williams to sign with Syracuse in December of 2024, despite him mostly being a Dino Babers recruit, the previous head coach of Syracuse. The staff watched him throughout the entire year. When he redshirted, he had a chance to be the backup potentially in 2024, didn't win the job. And yet the staff still decided, let's bring on some more competition in Rickie Collins. It doesn't mean that Jakhari Williams is going to end up being a bad quarterback. It doesn't mean that at all. It just means that if the staff was still looking to add a quarterback with Jakhari currently on the roster, maybe they're not really that sold on him. That's my opinion on it. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below, and we'll see. Maybe he makes a big push to start for opening day against Tennessee. And then you have your third and your fourth options, and we'll put a bonus option in there as well. Get that out of the way. Michael Johnson Jr., maybe he gets a chance to start. I doubt it, though. So let's talk about the third and the fourth options. These are both 2025 high school recruits, so they will enter as true freshmen. You got Luke Carney. Luke Carney certainly has more hype. He is a very exciting 3-star quarterback prospect from Texas, and he's got college football size already. He's listed at 6'2", 205 pounds. He can throw, he can run, he's accurate. And in my opinion, he'd be a higher rated prospect, but because of the school that he went to, in high school that is, he gets kind of pushed down the rankings. Recruiting rankings are generally more right than wrong. Right? Those scouts get paid for a reason. They're generally more right than you want to believe. They are more right than the average person, but there are flaws in the system. And if you don't go to one of the big time schools in high school, you get pushed down the recruiting rankings. That's just how it works. So Luke Carney, he'll have a chance to start. And then you got Rich Belin, the other 2025 quarterback prospect who not a lot of people are talking about because there's a lot of hype on Luke Carney. But Rich Belin is a 3-star quarterback from New York, and he also has good mobility, but he does have a smaller frame. He's 5'11", 190 pounds, so he's certainly got to put on some muscle in order to really, I think, make it in college football. The bottom line is this. Fran Brown has shown us that he's not afraid to play true freshmen. We saw this in 2024. Murad Watson, Marcellus Barnes, Yassine Willis, Davian Kerr, and plenty of others got chances to play or even started as true freshmen. But I think because guys like Rickie Collins and Jakhari Williams have already been in college, at least for 1 year, Rickie Collins for 2 years already, even though they don't have a lot of in-game experience, they've been around the college game. But Luke Carney and Rich Belin have not. So Luke Carney and Rich Belin, in my opinion, they will get an opportunity. I don't think Fran Brown's guaranteeing the job to anyone. So they'll get a chance. But it's not really looking likely for either of the true freshmen. I think more likely than not, I would say probably a 90% chance that the opening day starter against Tennessee is one of Rickie Collins or Jakhari Williams. And I'll leave a small chance that it's Luke Carney or Rich Belin if they blow the staff out of the water in the spring and in the fall. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments section below on what you would do with the true freshmen, Luke Carney and Rich Belin. I think it would make more sense to redshirt them, but who knows? If they're ready to play, Fran Brown has shown that he's not afraid to play true freshmen. So, Kyle McCord declaring for the NFL draft. It certainly has an effect on the current quarterbacks. It appears that there is going to be an open competition for the 2025 starting quarterback. Now, coming up, Syracuse football had chances to pursue other quarterbacks in the portal, but I'm here to tell you right now, I don't think the Orange should have any regrets with how they've handled the quarterback situation this offseason. So stick around and hear my thoughts in just a moment. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose, and the FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. My Super Bowl pick? I believe it's the team right now on FanDuel with the fourth best odds to win it. That's right, the Buffalo Bills. I know. I hope I'm not jinxing them. I hope not. I know many of you guys who are watching or listening to this are Buffalo Bills fans, but that's my pick to win the Super Bowl. I think it's their year. And you know what? I know we're in an ad right now, but I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below who you think is going to win the Super Bowl this season. To bet on it, just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. I have a question for all of you, so feel free to comment in the comment section below, all right? Ready? Did Syracuse football make a mistake by sticking with Kyle McCord? And by that, I mean trying to get him that fifth year of eligibility and trying to make him the starting quarterback again in 2025. Because let's be honest, Syracuse football, they gambled trying to get Kyle McCord back. He did not have another year of eligibility. In fact, the NCAA still hasn't made up their minds on whether or not Kyle McCord would have been given that fifth year. And ultimately, Kyle McCord said, you know what? I got the feedback I needed and decided to go to the NFL. So they gambled, and it was a gamble lost. But I'm here to tell you right now that I do not believe that Syracuse football, and yes, hindsight is 2020, but I don't believe that Syracuse football made a mistake with how they tried with their quarterbacks in the transfer portal in terms of their pursuit of them this offseason. Do you get what I mean there? Let me rephrase it for you. I think they handled the situation properly. And I'm going to tell you why. Feel free to disagree with me in the comments section below or agree with me in the comments section below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Number one, this is probably the most no-duh statement I'm ever going to make. Kyle McCord was always the best option to start in 2025. No duh, right? He was always the best. He gives the team the best chance to win, like it or not. They just won 10 games with him. And I know they have a tough schedule coming up next season, but if you have Kyle McCord, they would have had a chance to win. Right? He was the best option. So that's number one. Out of any of the quarterbacks available that they could have gotten in the portal or what they had currently on the roster, McCord was always plan A. Maybe you feel differently, but that's my opinion. And number two, this is another question I have for you guys. What was the alternative? What was it? Because here were the quarterbacks that Syracuse was linked to in the transfer portal. And by the way, because Syracuse football was trying to get Kyle McCord back for one more year, it clearly impacted them in getting a quarterback in the portal. Caden Salter, who had 1 year of eligibility remaining, he visited Syracuse. He's from Liberty. He had a good year in 2024, but an even better year in 2023. He would have been my number one choice in the portal. But that was the best option that Syracuse was going after. I think the risk was worth it in trying to get Kyle McCord back versus settling for Caden Salter. Number two, you got Connor Wigman. He's kind of got similar traits to Kyle McCord. He's a former 5-star from Texas A&M. He's had some bright spots at Texas A&M. But at the end of the day, he just isn't someone who could put it all together. And he's dealt with injuries. And he transferred to Houston. And who knows? maybe Connor Wigman and Caden Salter light it up in college football in 2025. And we're sitting here on September 27th talking about how Syracuse football should have been more aggressive in going after those players, and they should have held back on trying to get back Kyle McCord. But that's hindsight is 2020. We're talking about right here, right now. Did they really make a mistake? I don't think so. You got Rickie Collins, who they ultimately signed. That was another quarterback they were going after. And the final one was Anthony Calandria from Virginia, a 2-year starter there. And I'll be honest, if Syracuse football had signed Anthony Calandria, maybe he has a higher floor than Rickie Collins or Jakhari Williams because he's played. But had they signed Anthony Calandria from Virginia, I would have told you right after that podcast I would have told you after that signing, Syracuse football, if they start him next year, they're going 4-8. That's right. I am not a fan of Anthony Calandria. So when you look at the available options, Caden Salter, Connor Wigman, Rickie Collins, who they got, and Anthony Calandria, I think it makes perfect sense that the Orange tried to get Kyle McCord back because there was no slam dunk quarterback that was sitting in their laps that would have been an amazing alternative to Kyle McCord. There was no one who could be that slam dunk guarantee was going to be 95% of what Kyle McCord was in 2024. That just didn't exist. So they ended up going with Rickie Collins because it's pretty clear that he would have been willing to probably sit on the bench for 1 year to get a chance to start in 2026. And if Kyle McCord did not come back, he would have the chance to start. Whereas Caden Salter was not going to accept a bench role with 1 year of eligibility. And Connor Wigman probably feels he's too good. The fact that he's already started games in the SEC, he's probably thinking he's too good to sit on the bench. And Anthony Calandria, you can forget it. He's not good at all. All right. And some of the other quarterbacks that were available. I know a lot of people talked about Carson Beck from Georgia, right? Fran Brown from Georgia, the connection, right? He wasn't a realistic option. He committed to Miami earlier today. He had a no contact tag on him in the transfer portal when he entered yesterday. We all know that Miami tampered, but that's okay because the NCAA will turn a blind eye to tampering unless they decide to care about tampering, but that's neither here nor there. I'm not salty. I'm just pointing out the truth. Carson Beck was a lock to go to Miami the second he entered the transfer portal. It's also personal reasons. His girlfriend is one of the Cavender twins at Miami. It was a match made in heaven. It made perfect sense. They also needed a quarterback, and they have a lot of NIL money they can get him. He was never coming to Syracuse. John Mateer from Oklahoma, or he went to Oklahoma ultimately, but from Washington State. Oh, he would have been great. I wouldn't have risked trying to get Kyle McCord back if you can guarantee me that Syracuse would have gotten John Mateer, but that wasn't out there. It didn't exist. He was always going to Oklahoma. They have a boatload of NIL money that they probably gave him. And he was also following his offensive coordinator from Washington State to Oklahoma. So when you look at the options, there was no top quarterback prospect, in my opinion, that was available for Syracuse that was just sitting in its lap. That made sense that, you know what, maybe we shouldn't pursue another year of Kyle McCord because it's a risk. You're going to have to gamble. You might lose the gamble, as Syracuse did. They lost the gamble. There was just no one there. So they ended up going with a boomer bust guy in Rickie Collins. So I don't think they made a mistake. And ultimately, we'll find out in the fall. But I have no regrets with how Syracuse football handled the quarterback position in the transfer portal. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments section below on this. Because bottom line, I think they made the right call. McCord decided to enter the NFL. It is what it is, right? Now you have to turn your focus to next season with a quarterback battle, like we talked about earlier in the podcast. As far as what is coming up on the podcast in the future, so Poll Friday, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get it up by 6 o'clock like I normally do. The question for this week was, how do you feel about Syracuse football in the transfer portal right now? Because currently on 24/7 Sports, it's the second lowest rated class in the ACC. Obviously, that's not very good, right? So how do you feel about it? That question was asked before the Kyle McCord decision. And I had plenty of thoughts lined up for when Kyle McCord, or before Kyle McCord made his decision, right, to go to the NFL. I think I'm going to make it a full podcast. A Poll Friday full podcast, which has never been done here on this channel. We've never done a Poll Friday full podcast, but I think I'm going to make it a full podcast for you all. So that'll be 2 full podcasts in a day. How about that, ladies and gentlemen? All right. So we'll talk about how Kyle McCord impacts Syracuse football in the transfer portal, not just at the quarterback position, but other players on the roster and whether or not you should be worried or not. All right. So that's coming up later. Probably not at 6 o'clock, maybe 7, 8 o'clock-ish. So stick around, all right? And then on Saturday, Syracuse basketball. They are going on the road. They're playing Boston College. I think it's a must-win game for Syracuse if they want to make the ACC tournament. That game's at 3 p.m. Eastern, and there will be a full post-game reaction podcast on this channel. Thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen today. And for your second listen, you can check out the Locked On ACC podcast. Alex Dono and Kenton Gibbs, they keep it real. They bring you the truth about where your favorite ACC team stands within the conference. You can find Locked On ACC on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. If you like this podcast, click that like button. And if you really liked it, hit that subscribe button and tell 1 or 2 of your closest Syracuse friends to check out Locked On Syracuse on YouTube or wherever you download your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, all that fun jazz. It's all free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And also hit that notification bell so you know right away when I am dropping the next podcast. And I will see you all again very soon.